Remove that scarf. Now. The order snaps through the terminal with cold contempt, and before Amelia Hart can finish speaking, the officer's hand rips the silk from her shoulders. The sudden pull burns her skin and steals her breath, and when the fabric tears and falls to the floor, something older and deeper than pain settles into her chest. In that instant, as phones rise and silence hardens around them, the man who did this seals the end of his career, though he does not yet know it. Before going any further, where are you watching from today? If stories of justice, courage, and accountability matter to you, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Now, listen closely. At 9:45 that morning, Amelia Hart moves through the priority security lane at Los Angeles International Airport with the calm authority of someone who has stood in courtrooms her entire adult life and never flinched. She is 48 years old, a federal judge in the Central District of California, and the daughter of Mexican immigrants who taught her early that dignity must sometimes be carried quietly. Her stride is steady, her posture is upright. Draped over her shoulders is a sapphire scarf, worn smooth with age. Once belonging to her mother, it is not decoration, it is faith, memory, and survival, all woven into silk. In her black leather briefcase rest 180 pages of classified findings. Evidence of corruption so deep it threatens to expose millions stolen from Border Patrol funds, and a system designed to reward discrimination under the guise of enforcement. She is scheduled to present it in Washington, District of Columbia, before noon the next day. She reaches the checkpoint and presents her federal judicial identification and first-class boarding pass without ceremony. The officer who steps forward is Derek Harlan, badge 819. He is tall, broad, and rigid, with a stare that has learned to challenge rather than assess. Once removed from the Los Angeles Police Department for excessive force, he now wears Border Patrol green with resentment barely contained beneath the fabric. Gambling debts weigh on him. Promises of bonuses echo in his thoughts. His gaze never lingers on her credentials. It locks instead on the blue silk at her neck. "Hold it," he says, voice flat and dismissive. "Security alert on your profile. Remove the scarf for inspection." Amelia does not raise her voice. She never has to. "I am a federal judge," she says evenly. "Searching a religious garment without probable cause violates the Fourth Amendment and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act." Derek's mouth twists into a thin smile. "This is a border zone," he replies. "Your rights stop here." He steps closer, invading her space, and without warning, he grabs the scarf and tears it free. The sound of ripping silk is sharp and final. Gasps ripple outward. The scarf slips from his hand and lands on the polished tile like something discarded. Time seems to narrow. Amelia feels heat rush to her face, not from fear, but from humiliation that reaches back through decades. She remembers her mother being asked for papers at grocery stores. She remembers the long pauses when her last name was read aloud. Derek presses his boot onto the fallen scarf, grinding it into the floor, then lifts it with 2 fingers as if it were refuse. "Now we'll see what you're hiding," he says. Her voice is steady when she answers. "This is assault under color of law," she says. "You will answer for it." Laughter breaks from him, loud and performative. He signals to his colleague, Lena Voss, who stands a few steps away. Lena is 32, exhausted, and afraid. She is a single mother with a sick child and a stack of medical bills she cannot outrun. She has heard promises of money, whispered assurances that this is how things work. She says nothing. She looks away as Derek snaps cuffs onto Amelia's wrists and turns her toward the detention corridor. Phones are raised higher now. Someone begins recording openly. Someone else whispers her name, behind tinted glass in the monitoring office. Chief Victor Lang watches the feeds without expression. 52 years old, decorated, respected, and rotting from the inside. He has learned to wear authority like armor. Poker debts and secret accounts weigh heavier than his medals ever did. He types a message with practiced ease, target neutralized, within seconds. A reply appears from Elias Crow, Deputy Director at the Department of Homeland Security, a man who once called Amelia his closest friend. Good. Make sure she misses the meeting. Amelia is led away as if she were a threat rather than the person exposing one. The cuffs are removed inside the detention area, but the damage has already been done. 10 minutes later, the videos hit social media. The torn scarf, the badge number, the silence of other officers. Hashtags begin to multiply, but the meaning is already clear. This was not a mistake. It was a decision. Zoe Lynn, Amelia's judicial assistant, tries her phone again and again. When there is still no answer, she does what she was trained to do. She calls Nathan Hart. He listens without interruption. Nathan is the chief of police in Los Angeles. He has buried partners and careers ruined by corruption. When he speaks, his voice is controlled and cold. "I'll handle it," he says, back in the detention area. Amelia stands alone, shoulders squared, breathing slow. She feels the absence of the scarf like a wound. She does not cry. She does not plead. In her mind, statutes line up with perfect clarity. Title 18, Section 2, 4.2, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law, Conspiracy. She knows exactly what has been done to her, and she knows exactly what it will cost the people responsible. Derek Harlan walks away convinced he has asserted control. Victor Lang watches the screens believing the threat has been contained. Elias Crow pours himself a drink and tells himself this was necessary. All of them are wrong. What began with a torn scarf at a security checkpoint has already escaped their grasp. It is moving now, through witnesses, through records, through the law itself. And it will not stop until every name behind this moment is spoken aloud, in open court, under oath. The detention cell at Los Angeles International Airport is colder than Amelia Hart expects. Not in temperature, but in intent. A place designed to strip people of voice and momentum. And as she sits on the narrow metal bench at 10:30 a.m., hands uncuffed yet burning with restraint, she feels the weight of power misused settle into her bones. She closes her eyes briefly, not to escape, but to focus, drawing her breathing into a slow, disciplined rhythm learned over decades in courtrooms where emotion must never outrun reason. Memories surface without permission. Her mother standing patiently while agents questioned her accent. Her father folding his hands and waiting for permission to move. The long years Amelia spent learning that the law is not a shield unless one is willing to stand still while it is tested. In her mind, statutes align with sharp clarity, not as abstractions, but as living standards violated in real time. Title 18, Section 2, 4.2, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law, Section 2.4. 1. Conspiracy Against Rights, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Each provision precise, each breach unmistakable. She straightens her spine and fixes her gaze on the blank wall ahead, because she understands something the men outside do not, that moments like this are not endured. They are documented, remembered, and answered. Beyond the door, in a corridor thick with muffled sound. Derek Harlan paces with restless energy, his confidence brittle beneath the uniform. He speaks in a low voice that still carries aggression, telling Chief Victor Lang that the situation is contained, that the woman is just another complaint waiting to be buried. Victor responds with the calm authority of a man who believes hierarchy protects him, reminding Derek that this judge is the auditor, the one whose report threatens their $600,000 annual bonus pool, the one whose presence in Washington would end the easy flow of money disguised as enforcement incentives. Lena Voss stands a step behind them, arms crossed tightly, eyes fixed on the floor, nodding when addressed, silent when she should speak, because silence has become her currency. Every promise she accepted now presses against her chest. Every glance at her phone conjures her son's hospital bracelet, and every word spoken by Victor feels like a debt she does not know how to repay. Victor's phone vibrates again, sharp and insistent, and when he answers, Elias Crow's voice is smooth, unhurried, and precise, the tone of a man accustomed to making decisions without consequence. Elias reminds Victor that he tipped them off about Amelia's flight for a reason, that the goal was delay, disruption, just enough friction to keep a report from being delivered on time. He suggests resistance if necessary, language chosen carefully to sound procedural rather than criminal, and Victor assures him it will be handled. Because men like Victor mistake coordination for control. Inside the cell, Amelia hears footsteps approach and lifts her head, expression composed, shoulders squared, when the door opens. The man who steps in is not Derek, but Miguel Torres, young, earnest, and visibly unsettled, his body camera blinking red against his uniform like a quiet witness. He clears his throat and tells her she is being released. No charges, no explanation, as if the absence of paperwork could erase the violation itself. When she asks about her scarf, his eyes flicker away before he says it has been retained for further testing, a phrase emptied of meaning yet heavy with insult. Amelia does not react outwardly. She does not raise her voice or ask for favors. She looks directly into the lens on Miguel's chest and speaks with measured authority, stating clearly that she is formally filing complaints against Officer Derek Harlan for assault, violation of religious freedom, and deprivation of rights under color of law, and against Chief Victor Lang for conspiracy and deliberate indifference. She asks Miguel, calmly, if he is recording. He nods, swallowing hard, and in that nod, a line is crossed, because once words like these are captured, they cannot be contained again. Released at 11:45 a.m., Amelia walks out of the detention area with her head high, her pace steady, refusing to grant anyone the satisfaction of seeing hesitation. The absence of the sapphire scarf feels like a visible wound, yet she does not reach to cover it. She steps into the open terminal and feels the weight of unseen eyes, of people who recognize her face from screens now circulating online. She reaches for her phone the moment she clears the doors and calls Nathan Hart without delay. He answers on the first ring, and when she tells him they targeted her because of the report, that this was not random but deliberate, his response is immediate and final. He tells her he has already invoked federal civil rights jurisdiction, that the FBI has been contacted, and that this will not be handled quietly, because he knows, from years of command, that silence is the first ally of corruption. The afternoon passes in fragments, calls returned, messages received, brief silences broken by updates that confirm what Amelia already suspects. By evening, she is home, seated at her own dining table, posture composed, documents neatly aligned. When the doorbell rings, Elias Crow stands there with practiced concern, suit immaculate, expression rehearsed to signal empathy without accountability. He speaks of shock and regret, calls her an old friend, references shared years in law school, shared ideals, shared victories. He suggests, carefully, that perhaps this incident has gone far enough, that letting it rest might spare everyone unnecessary damage. Amelia listens without interruption, her phone discreetly recording every word, every pause, every carefully chosen phrase. She asks him why the Department of Homeland Security would tolerate such conduct, and in his attempt to reassure her, Elias reveals more than he intends. Speaking of pressures, of systems too large to challenge, of too much at stake to allow one report to unravel careers. He tells her she does not understand the balance required at his level, and in that moment, the betrayal becomes complete, because this is not fear speaking, but ambition unmasked. Amelia ends the conversation without confrontation, walking him to the door with courtesy intact, because she understands that composure is more disarming than anger. When the door closes behind him, she exhales slowly, not in relief, but in resolve, knowing she now possesses proof not only of corruption, but of intent, captured cleanly and without theatrics. She sits alone for a long moment, replaying the day in her mind, the contempt at the checkpoint, the tearing of silk, the cold bench, the quiet nod of a young officer who chose to record rather than look away. She understands with absolute certainty that what happened to her was meant to stop a report, to delay a reckoning, to remind her of her place. It has instead clarified everything. Somewhere, Derek Harlan convinces himself this will fade. Victor Lang reassures himself he has seen worse. Elias Crow pours another drink and tells himself he chose survival. None of them hear what Amelia hears clearly now. The low, steady advance of accountability, patient, methodical, and already moving toward them, step by step, without haste and without mercy. At 1 p.m., inside a secured conference room at the FBI Los Angeles field office, the story moves from public outrage to disciplined pursuit. Amelia Hart sits upright at the polished table, hands folded, posture unyielding, while Special Agent Sophia Reyes studies her with the quiet focus of someone who understands what it costs to stand alone against authority. Sophia has seen this look before. Not fear, not anger, but certainty born from principle, and it steadies her, without ceremony. Amelia opens her briefcase and slides the dossier forward. 180 pages, cleanly tabbed, meticulously organized. $4.1 million in financial discrepancies traced through phony equipment contracts. 112 civil rights complaints dismissed without investigation. An enforcement incentive system engineered to reward discriminatory stops and punish restraint. Amelia speaks evenly, without flourish, explaining how audits were delayed, how objections were sidelined, how silence was rewarded. Sophia listens without interruption, because she knows this is not just a case, it is a system built to protect itself. Her own resolve hardens, shaped by memory, by a sister once thrown to the pavement during a stop that ended without apology and without consequence. When Sophia finally closes the file, her voice is low and decisive. "We are opening a full task force," she says. The room fills quickly, not with noise, but with intent. Liam Foster arrives first, the Bureau's senior financial analysis specialist, precise and unassuming, already scrolling through numbers that most people would never notice. Money, to him, is confession without emotion. Marcus Hale follows, digital forensics expert, alert and methodical, his mind already mapping networks and timelines. Sophia assigns roles with clarity. Liam will trace every dollar. Marcus will reconstruct every deleted file, every disabled camera, every altered timestamp. No assumptions, no shortcuts. Amelia remains present, not as a complainant seeking reassurance, but as a witness offering structure. She explains the bonus system in detail, how quotas were disguised as incentives, how discretion became leverage, how officers learned exactly how far they could go without consequence. She speaks in facts, not accusations. By late afternoon, the first fractures appear. Liam flags irregular deposits tied to Derek Harlan, nearly $180,000 over 18 months, broken into increments designed to avoid scrutiny. Marcus confirms that Derek's body camera was manually disabled exactly 8 minutes before Amelia reached the checkpoint. A deliberate action requiring intent and familiarity. That detail shifts the investigation decisively. This was not heat of the moment. It was planned. Sophia orders subpoenas prepared immediately, her expression unreadable. There will be no press statements yet. Evidence must come first. Interviews begin quietly and methodically. Immigration attorney Carla Diaz sits across from Sophia, hands clasped tightly, voice controlled despite visible strain. She describes being pulled into secondary screening months earlier. Derek Harlan's tone low and intimate, his touch deliberate, his badge used as permission rather than authority. She filed a complaint. It vanished. No follow-up, no record. Councilman Raj Patel follows, posture rigid, voice edged with contained fury. He recounts being stopped after returning from a conference, questioned aggressively, and later warned by Victor Lang himself that pursuing a racial profiling complaint would bring consequences for his family. He believed it. He stayed silent. Until now. Each testimony adds weight. Each name widens the scope. Outside the building, the story refuses containment. Dana Ruiz, investigative journalist with a reputation for accuracy and restraint, runs the footage repeatedly. The torn sapphire scarf, the visible badge number, the silence of surrounding officers. Public pressure grows steadily, not through speculation, but through repetition of undeniable images. Sophia monitors the coverage without comment. She understands exposure can accelerate justice or compromise it. Timing matters. Inside Border Patrol headquarters, Lena Voss feels the walls narrowing. She watches the news when she thinks no one is looking. Her phone vibrates with messages she does not answer. Derek's presence becomes more menacing, his questions sharper, his patience thinner. When he corners her near the lockers and asks why she looks nervous, his voice carries warning rather than concern. That night, alone. Lena sends an anonymous message to the FBI. A single sentence directing them to a hidden server housed under a procurement alias. Marcus receives it before midnight, by dawn. The server is decrypted. What emerges is devastating. Transaction logs, internal directives, authorization codes traced to Victor Lang, instructions outlining how to fabricate indicators, how to plant suspicion, how to justify detention if necessary. The investigation crosses an invisible threshold. This is no longer misconduct. It is coordinated conspiracy. Derek senses the shift before he understands it. He grows erratic. He disables his camera more often. He watches colleagues too closely. When he confronts Lena in front of her son, voice low and threatening, something inside her breaks. Fear gives way to resolve born of exhaustion. She contacts Sophia directly. Her voice shakes, but her words are precise. She will cooperate, fully. She provides names, procedures, and confirmation of orders given verbally to avoid records. Amelia continues to cooperate without drama, yet the strain is undeniable. Meetings stretch late, questions repeat. Nathan insists on protective measures as unfamiliar vehicles linger too long near their home. Anonymous messages arrive without signature or detail. Amelia deletes them without comment. She has learned that intimidation only succeeds when acknowledged. By the end of the week, Liam completes his preliminary report. Victor Lang's accounts revealed $2.3 million in unexplained deposits, layered through shell companies and offshore transfers. Marcus recovers deleted footage showing Victor instructing Lena to fabricate cause. The evidence aligns with brutal clarity. Sophia briefs her superiors and receives authorization for coordinated arrests, though she holds them back. The net must be complete, in a rare private moment. Amelia reviews the compiled findings alone. She does not smile. She does not feel triumph. Each page represents harm inflicted on someone who did not have her standing, her resources, or her voice. She understands that justice, once unleashed, will destroy lives, careers, and illusions. It is not gentle. It is necessary. As night settles over Los Angeles, subpoenas are served quietly, warrants are drafted, witnesses are secured. Somewhere, Derek Harlan tells himself this will fade. Victor Lang convinces himself he has survived worse. Elias Crow watches the coverage with tightening jaw, realizing control has slipped. None of them yet grasp the truth that has become unavoidable. The system they manipulated has turned its full attention toward them, and it will not look away. 1 week later, inside the FBI bullpen, the investigation hardens into something unmistakable and irreversible, no longer a collection of allegations, but a structure of proof assembling itself with relentless precision. Liam Foster stands at a glass board dense with figures, dates, and directional arrows. His voice steady as he explains that $3.9 million has now been traced through layered transfers into offshore accounts tied directly to Elias Crow, hidden behind consulting firms that never employed staff, never delivered services, and never existed beyond paper. The routing is deliberate, sophisticated, and unmistakable, designed not merely to hide money, but to signal confidence that no one would ever look closely enough. Marcus Hale follows, projecting reconstructed files onto a secure screen, showing deleted footage restored frame by frame, audio cleaned and authenticated, timestamps aligned with internal access logs. Victor Lang's voice fills the room, unmistakable and calm, instructing Lena Voss to plant false indicators into Amelia Hart's briefcase if necessary, to create justification for detention under fabricated suspicion, to make delay look procedural rather than intentional. No one speaks as the recording ends, because every agent present understands the gravity of what they are hearing. This is not corruption tolerated by leadership. This is corruption ordered by it. Sophia Reyes absorbs the information without visible reaction. Arms crossed, eyes fixed forward, calculating not only what they know, but how the targets will respond once they sense the net tightening. She orders immediate protective status for key witnesses and authorizes discreet expansion of surveillance. No arrests yet. Pressure must be applied evenly, deliberately, without signaling panic. Men who believe themselves powerful often destroy evidence when rushed. She will not give them that chance. At Los Angeles International Airport, Miguel Torres parks his car in the staff garage as he always does, unaware that he is being watched. Derek Harlan stands near a concrete pillar, posture rigid, eyes tracking movement with increasing paranoia. He has felt the shift all week, conversations stopping when he enters a room, supervisors avoiding his gaze, Lena's silence growing heavier. When Miguel approaches, Derek steps into his path with a forced casualness that barely masks threat, asking who Miguel has been talking to, what he recorded, what he thinks he saw. Miguel answers carefully, voice neutral, heart pounding, and when Derek's tone sharpens and his hand moves toward Miguel's chest, instinct takes over. Miguel runs. The pursuit is brief and violent, boots striking concrete, Derek shouting threats that echo through the structure, but Miguel breaks free into the open lot and collapses beside a passing vehicle, shaking, alive. Within hours, he is at the FBI field office, giving a statement that confirms what investigators already know, that Derek is unraveling, and that fear has replaced discipline across the city. Amelia Hart sits at her desk reviewing documents when her phone rings. It is Elias Crow, requesting a private meeting, against Nathan's objections. Amelia agrees, understanding that clarity often comes when people believe they still control the narrative. They meet in a neutral office, quiet and unremarkable, chosen precisely because it offers no audience. When Elias enters, the familiarity of his presence cuts deeper than anger ever could. Amelia does not greet him warmly. She asks a single question, calmly, directly, without accusation. Why? Elias laughs softly, not with humor, but with resentment long rehearsed. He tells her the truth without apology, that she always outshone him, that her integrity made his ambition look small, that he wanted the top position once, just once, and the system rewarded those willing to bend. He speaks of survival as if it were virtue, of compromise as if it were intelligence. Amelia listens without interruption, her expression composed, because she understands now that betrayal is rarely impulsive. It is cultivated patiently, justified quietly, and executed without remorse. Nathan increases security immediately. Unmarked vehicles begin appearing at irregular intervals near their home. Phone lines click faintly before calls connect. Anonymous messages arrive without signatures or threats, only reminders of presence. Amelia refuses to acknowledge them. She does not alter her schedule. She does not lower her voice. She does not change her posture. She understands that intimidation feeds on reaction, and she offers none. Meanwhile, Lena Voss sits alone in her apartment, staring at her son as he sleeps, the rhythm of his breathing steady but fragile. Derek's threats replay in her mind, his certainty that silence will protect them both. She knows now that it will not. The weight of what she has done presses harder than fear of punishment. When she contacts Sophia Reyes again, her voice is steadier than she expects. She agrees to cooperate fully, to testify, to surrender records, messages, procedures, and verbal directives given specifically to avoid documentation. She does not ask for forgiveness. She asks only for the chance to tell the truth. Sophia accepts without judgment. Cooperation is not absolution. It is evidence. The investigation accelerates with discipline. Liam confirms that enforcement bonus payouts coincide precisely with spikes in discriminatory stops, each surge followed by internal commendations. Marcus recovers internal messages referencing Amelia's flight weeks in advance, discussions framed as logistics, but unmistakable in intent. The timeline aligns with chilling clarity. Sophia briefs federal prosecutors and receives authorization to prepare coordinated arrests. Still, she waits. Every target must be secured simultaneously. Fragmented justice invites escape, and escape invites denial. As the week closes, the antagonists move independently, each convinced there is still room to maneuver. Derek drinks more, sleeps less, grows volatile and careless. Victor Lang retreats into formal silence, convinced rank and history will shield him. Elias Crow drafts contingency statements filled with procedural language no one will believe. None of them yet understand the truth that has already sealed their fate. The case no longer belongs to individuals. It belongs to records, timestamps, voices, and numbers that do not forget. In the quiet moments between briefings, Amelia reflects not on herself, but on the countless people who endured what she survived without cameras, credentials, or allies. She understands that her role now is not merely to testify, but to stand visibly and unyieldingly until the system corrects itself. The machinery of justice grinds forward, deliberate and methodical, and for the first time, those who abused power feel its weight pressing back, steady, patient, and inescapable. 3 weeks later, just before dawn, the machinery of justice moves with deliberate precision, not hurried and not hesitant, but exact. As the United States Attorney's Office authorizes simultaneous arrests across Los Angeles, Elena Vargas stands at the head of the conference table in a windowless room. Posture straight, voice calm, eyes fixed on the warrants spread before her. She has reviewed them line by line through the night, not because she doubts the evidence, but because she respects the weight of what is about to happen. These are not symbolic arrests. They are irreversible. She gives the final approval without flourish, knowing that truth does not need ceremony. Federal teams disperse quietly, each assignment timed to the minute, each location chosen to isolate targets from one another, to prevent warnings, resistance, or escape. This is how accountability enters rooms that believe themselves untouchable. At 6 a.m., our agents surround the narrow townhouse where Derek Harlan has spent another restless night, the residue of alcohol and paranoia clinging to him. The knock is firm and unmistakable when he opens the door. Confusion flashes briefly across his face before hardening into defiance. He demands explanations. He raises his voice. He reaches toward a drawer he should not touch. The response is immediate. He is forced to the floor, his protests cut short as cuffs close around wrists that once used authority as a weapon, as he is lifted and escorted outside. Neighbors watch in stunned silence, phones raised but forgotten. And in that moment, the truth finally reaches him. This is not an internal review. This is not administrative leave. This is not something his badge can deflect. This is the end of his career and the beginning of his reckoning. Across the city, Victor Lang sits alone at his kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee gone cold. The house unnaturally quiet. He has not slept. When agents arrive, he does not resist. He listens as the charges are read, his expression controlled, almost hollow. Years of deception have drained him of the instinct to fight. He signs where instructed, as he stands to leave. His phone vibrates once, a message from his wife, brief and final, telling him she has packed and filed. He nods as if he expected it. By the time the door closes behind him, his former life has already ended. In a modest apartment nearby, Lena Voss is awake before the knock comes. She opens the door herself, eyes tired but steady. Her son still asleep in the next room. She does not argue. She does not plead. She hands agents additional documents she kept hidden, insurance she once believed she might need to survive what she helped create. The agents note her cooperation without comment. Leniency is not decided in doorways. It is earned later, under oath, downtown, under the bright lights of a charity gala filled with donors and rehearsed compassion. Elias Crow smiles easily, confident in the insulation of reputation and position. He is mid-sentence when federal agents approach him, identify themselves quietly, and ask him to step aside. The color drains from his face as cameras catch the moment he realizes this cannot be redirected. He attempts composure, references protocol, asks to make a call. None of it matters. He is escorted past stunned guests and flashing cameras, his name already surging across headlines before he reaches the vehicle. This is not the fall he imagined. It is public, immediate, and absolute by mid-morning. The arrests dominate every news cycle. But inside the federal courthouse, the tone remains restrained. Elena Vargas briefs her prosecution team without triumph. Public attention is fleeting. Records endure. Judge Leonard Brooks is assigned to preside, a jurist known for discipline, patience, and intolerance for theatrics. He reviews the case file personally, marking passages with quiet care. Amelia Hart is informed without ceremony. She receives the news at her desk, acknowledges it once, and returns to her work. Arrests are not conclusions. They are thresholds. Zoe Lynn works late into the night assembling exhibits, timelines, and correspondence. In the process, she uncovers an old letter dated years earlier, written in Elias Crow's careful hand, praising Amelia's integrity, calling her the conscience of their generation, predicting she would someday lead reform from the bench. The irony is sharp and undeniable. Elena Vargas adds it to the evidence file, understanding that truth often indicts itself. As the defendants are processed separately, each confronts reality in isolation. Derek Harlan demands counsel and claims persecution, his voice loud, his confidence brittle. Victor Lang retreats into silence, staring at the table during intake as if numbers might rearrange themselves. Lena Voss begins the long, methodical process of cooperation, answering questions carefully, fully, accepting responsibility without theatrics. Elias Crow sits alone in a holding cell, staring at his reflection in the glass, realizing too late that ambition without restraint always collects its debt, and that the system he manipulated has no loyalty to those who serve it dishonestly. Amelia does not attend the arrests. She does not watch the footage. She remains at work, reviewing motions, maintaining routine, because stability is her answer to chaos. When asked for comment, she declines. Her role is not to celebrate downfall, it is to ensure the law completes its course. Nathan Hart stands beside her that evening, protective but proud, understanding that this moment, heavy as it is, affirms every principle she lived by. By nightfall, speculation hums across the city, but the facts remain unchanged. 4 individuals are in federal custody. The evidence is secured. The charges are filed. What began as an attempt to delay a report has become an uncontainable reckoning. The system they exploited has turned inward, and it will move forward now without apology, without hesitation, and without exception, until every consequence is delivered, sentence by sentence, name by name, under the full weight of the law, 6 months later. Inside the United States District Court for the Central District of California, the trial opens under a gravity that cannot be manufactured or exaggerated, because what stands before the jury is not merely a criminal proceeding, but a test of whether power can still be held accountable when it believes itself protected. The courtroom is filled long before proceedings begin, yet a disciplined silence settles as Judge Leonard Brooks enters, his presence controlled, his expression unreadable, a jurist known for precision and an absolute intolerance for spectacle. When he takes the bench, there is no flourish, only order. Elena Vargas rises for the prosecution with deliberate calm, her voice measured, her words chosen carefully, reminding the jury that this case is not about ideology or emotion, but about choices made repeatedly, deliberately, and for profit under color of law. She does not begin with argument. She begins with evidence. The airport footage plays without narration, allowing the jurors to see the sapphire scarf torn from Amelia Hart's shoulders, to watch it fall to the floor, to note the visible badge number, and to observe the surrounding officers who chose stillness over intervention. The silence in the room is heavier than any statement could be. Elena then explains how that moment was not isolated, but the visible surface of a long-running conspiracy built on discrimination, silence, and money. She introduces financial records, timelines, and internal communications, demonstrating how enforcement bonuses rose in direct correlation with racial profiling complaints, how those complaints disappeared, and how authority was weaponized to protect revenue streams rather than people. When Amelia Hart is called to the stand, the courtroom tightens with focus. She walks forward with composed certainty, sworn in without hesitation, her voice steady, her posture upright. She recounts the incident at Los Angeles International Airport plainly, without embellishment or dramatization, describing the demand to remove her scarf, the moment it was torn away, the humiliation that followed, and the unmistakable intent to delay her travel to Washington. She explains the significance of the scarf, not as sentiment, but as protected religious expression, and she explains the contents of the report she carried, detailing its findings with clarity and restraint. Under cross-examination, defense counsel presses aggressively, suggesting misunderstanding, exaggeration, even provocation. Amelia responds precisely, correcting mischaracterizations calmly, reminding the court that constitutional protections do not dissolve at security checkpoints, and that authority does not convert abuse into procedure. She does not argue. She clarifies. Her composure becomes evidence itself, a quiet demonstration of credibility that no objection can erode. Carla Diaz follows, her testimony controlled yet resolute, as she describes being pulled into secondary screening months earlier, the invasive questioning, the deliberate physical contact, and the complaint she filed that vanished without explanation. She speaks of the fear that followed, the knowledge that silence felt safer than persistence, and the cost of realizing that reporting abuse carried its own punishment. Raj Patel takes the stand next, posture rigid, voice measured as he recounts being stopped and later threatened by Victor Lang himself, warned that pursuing a racial profiling complaint would bring consequences for his family. He explains his decision to remain silent not as acceptance, but as protection, and the jury hears the weight of that choice in every word. Miguel Torres testifies with visible strain, hands clenched lightly at the edge of the witness stand. He describes the day Amelia was detained, the moment he realized Derek Harlan had disabled his body camera, the pressure to comply without question, and the night Derek confronted him in the parking garage. He recounts running not out of guilt, but survival, and his decision to come forward despite knowing the personal risk. His voice does not waver when he explains why he recorded Amelia's complaint. He says simply that it was the right thing to do. When Derek Harlan takes the stand, the contrast is immediate and unmistakable. His demeanor is defensive, his tone sharp, his posture rigid. He denies intent, he denies bias, he denies memory. He frames his actions as routine and his words as misunderstood, leaning heavily on procedure without substance. Then Liam Foster begins his cross-examination, methodical and precise, presenting bank records that show unexplained deposits timed exactly with enforcement bonus payouts. He traces the money carefully, asking simple questions that demand exact answers. As Derek responds, his confidence fractures, his explanations grow shorter, his voice tightens. Each denial is followed by a document that contradicts it. The jury watches as bravado gives way to inconsistency, and inconsistency gives way to exposure. Victor Lang's testimony is colder, more calculated. He speaks slowly, choosing words that distance himself from operational decisions, insisting he never ordered misconduct. Marcus Hale dismantles that distance with clinical efficiency, reconstructing deleted files, restoring audio, and presenting metadata that aligns perfectly with internal access logs. Victor's own voice fills the courtroom, instructing Lena Voss to fabricate indicators and justify detention if necessary. The evidence is not emotional, it is undeniable. Victor's composure holds until the recording ends, and the silence that follows is heavy with recognition. Lena Voss testifies next, her cooperation evident, her tone sober. She describes the structure of the scheme, the pressure applied from above, the promises made, and the consequences implied for disobedience. She does not excuse herself. She accepts responsibility and explains why she chose to come forward, not seeking sympathy, but acknowledging obligation. Her testimony fills gaps the defendants hoped would remain abstract, grounding the conspiracy in human decisions and moral failure. The final moment comes when Elena Vargas introduces the recorded conversation between Amelia Hart and Elias Crow. The courtroom listens as his own words reveal motive without ambiguity, envy without restraint, and complicity without apology. He speaks of ambition, of survival, of bending rules because others did. No interpretation is required. When the recording ends, Elias sits rigid, his posture folding inward as the weight of his own voice settles over the room. The defense offers closing arguments rooted in procedure and doubt, but the narrative no longer belongs to them. The evidence has aligned too clearly. After days of deliberation, the jury returns. The courtroom rises. Faces are solemn, deliberate. Verdicts are read one by one, guilty on all counts. There is no outburst, no spectacle. The sound of the gavel is restrained, but final. Amelia lowers her gaze briefly, not in triumph, but in acknowledgement of the gravity now carried forward by the law. The courtroom exhales slowly, understanding that justice, when delivered through discipline rather than noise, is not loud. It is decisive. Sentencing day arrives without spectacle, because justice, when it has done its work correctly, no longer needs noise to announce itself. The courtroom is filled again, But the energy has changed. There is no tension now, no anticipation, only the quiet weight of consequence. Judge Leonard Brooks enters with the same measured discipline he has shown from the beginning, his presence steady, his voice firm as he reminds everyone that sentencing is not an act of emotion or revenge, but a declaration of accountability, deterrence, and protection of the public trust. One by one, the defendants stand, no longer shielded by uniforms, titles, or ambition, and hear their futures spoken plainly into the record. Derek Harlan is called first. He rises stiffly, jaw clenched, eyes fixed straight ahead, still clinging to a belief that he was singled out rather than exposed. The court recounts his crimes with precision: assault under color of law, deprivation of constitutional rights, conspiracy, obstruction, each count supported by evidence that stripped his authority down to its abuse. Judge Brooks speaks without anger, explaining that the sentence reflects not only what Derek did to Amelia Hart, but what he represented to every traveler who believed the law would protect them: 12 years in federal prison, full restitution, permanent loss of credentials. Derek says nothing. He offers no remorse. He is led away convinced he was wronged. Months later, inside a prison system he once dismissed, Derek dies during a violent riot, his life ending without recognition, a final and bitter echo of the force he once used without restraint. Victor Lang stands next, shoulders heavy, posture diminished, the illusion of command finally gone. The court details his role as architect, not follower, the manipulation of subordinates, the weaponization of bonuses, the embezzlement exceeding $2 million, and the deliberate effort to silence oversight. Judge Brooks notes that betrayal of public trust by leadership is among the gravest offenses a court can consider. Victor is sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. His voice never rises. He does not argue. His wife never visits. 14 months into his sentence, alone and disgraced, Victor takes his own life in his cell, an act born not of remorse, but of the collapse of control he once believed permanent. Lena Voss is called forward next. She stands trembling, but composed, hands clasped tightly, eyes lowered but clear. The court acknowledges her crimes, her silence, her participation, and then acknowledges her cooperation, the risk she took to expose the structure from within. Judge Brooks addresses her directly, stating that accountability and compassion are not opposites, but separate responsibilities. Lena is sentenced to 8 years, reduced for cooperation, with mandatory rehabilitation, counseling, and continued federal oversight. Tears fall quietly as she nods, not in relief, but in acceptance. Years later, after serving her sentence and completing treatment, Lena regains custody of her son, not as redemption granted, but as responsibility earned through truth and consequence. Elias Crow stands last. He rises slowly, the confidence that once defined him replaced by a hollow stillness. The court recounts his betrayal with deliberate care, the abuse of his position, the bribes, the calculated targeting of a former friend to preserve ambition. Judge Brooks speaks of how power corrodes most deeply when wrapped in intelligence and restraint. Elias is sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, disbarred permanently, barred from public service without exception. He says nothing. He does not look toward Amelia. He is led away to live out his years in isolation, remembered not for his ascent, but for the damage his choices inflicted. When the gavel falls, it does not echo loudly. It does not need to. The case moves beyond the courtroom, its impact expanding outward with steady force. Over $6 million are recovered and returned to public funds. Congressional hearings follow. Internal audits expand nationwide. Enforcement incentive programs are dismantled. Policies once hidden behind technical language are rewritten in plain terms. Oversight mechanisms are no longer symbolic. They are enforceable. Amelia Hart is appointed chair of the newly formed Border Patrol Ethics Commission, a body granted independent authority, subpoena power, and public reporting mandates. She accepts without ceremony, understanding that reform is not declared once, but guarded continuously. She oversees training changes, disciplinary standards, and independent review boards that include civilian representation. Airports across the country revise procedures. Los Angeles International Airport becomes a national model, not because it was flawless, but because it confronted failure openly and corrected it. Legislation follows with rare unity. The Airport Religious Freedom and Dignity Act passes with bipartisan support, codifying protections for religious garments, clarifying the limits of discretionary searches, and imposing mandatory consequences for violations. Training protocols are rewritten. Body camera regulations are strengthened. Whistleblower protections are expanded. The law, once bent quietly, is reinforced in public view at the final press conference. Amelia stands at the podium beneath steady lights, the room filled with officials, journalists, and observers who understand that this moment represents more than closure. Draped over her shoulders is a new sapphire scarf, identical in color to the one torn from her months earlier. She does not speak of vengeance. She does not recount pain. She speaks simply, stating that humiliation was intended to silence her, that tearing away a symbol of faith was meant to delay truth. Instead, it revealed corruption protected by silence. She reminds the audience that a badge grants no immunity from justice, and that authority without accountability is not order, but danger. Her voice is calm. Her words are final. When the conference ends, Amelia steps away from the podium and takes Nathan Hart's hand. They walk together through the corridor without pause, without celebration, understanding that strength is not measured by survival alone, but by what is changed afterward. Behind them, a system moves forward altered, watched more closely now, less comfortable in secrecy. Ahead of them, the work continues, but the message endures, clear and unshakable. No one stands above the law, and justice, when confronted directly and carried through without compromise, always prevails. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please subscribe, give it a like, and share your thoughts below. Justice matters when we stand together.